Welcome to the first video in a series called Abusers in the Bible. Today we're going to be looking at Pharaoh. When we read the story in Exodus, we can be so focused on the miracles and the larger-than-life circumstances that we miss the practical lessons in there about abusive behavior. Pharaoh may have lived many years ago, but his tactics, his characteristics are still seen in people today. So let's examine Pharaoh the abuser. To clarify, we're looking at the second Pharaoh mentioned in the book of Exodus, not the Pharaoh at the beginning of the story, the one in whose household Moses grew up, the one that first enslaved the Israelites, and the one that had the Israelite babies killed. Although that Pharaoh obviously also demonstrated severely malicious behavior. The Pharaoh we are talking about is found in Exodus chapters 3 through 14. Abuse is about maliciously controlling others. Throughout the story, Pharaoh's motivation is to try and keep that control over the Israelites, to not let it go, despite everything that God is doing to compel him to let them go. Let's identify some of his abusive characteristics. Number one, malicious punishment. Initially, Moses doesn't even ask for Pharaoh to completely let the Israelites go. He just requests that he let the Israelites go for 3 days to go into the wilderness and to sacrifice to the Lord. But Pharaoh obviously refuses. He doesn't even want to give up that much control, that partial amount of control. He even scoffs at the request and says, "Who is the Lord that I should obey him?" So it's about pride, it's about status for Pharaoh. And we see he even resents being asked this request from Moses. We see that because instead of him just saying no, he retaliates. He punishes the Israelites for even asking. He says now they have to gather their own straw to make bricks, but they're still expected to meet the same quota of bricks every day. And so because of the request, he's now put them in a no-win situation with just unreasonable expectations. Abusers use malicious punishment against those that threaten their control, because abusers hate the idea of anyone under them gaining any sort of independence. And so even the idea of independence, if it's questioned, if it's brought up, if it's threatened, abusers will react to stop that threat to their control. They'll use mockery, threats, manipulation, actual force, or like we see here with Pharaoh, a punishment, so that everyone understands never to entertain the idea of independence again. Number two, distorting the narrative. Notice the way Pharaoh explains why the Israelites can't meet their quota of bricks. It's Pharaoh who's responsible, but he blames the Israelites. He claims it's because they're idle, they're lazy. This is a textbook example of look what you made me do. In other words, it's your fault that I've mistreated you like this. It's your fault that I've had to do this to you. In Pharaoh's case, he's saying it's because you're lazy that I've had to do this. Abusers often frame their actions this way to justify their own behavior and to convince victims of this distorted version of reality. What's happening is abusers are trying to control truth itself. They're trying to control reality itself. Examples include someone who beats their spouse and then says, "If you hadn't have made me angry, I wouldn't have done that." Or an abusive parent that says, "I had to destroy something you loved to teach you a lesson about respect." Or someone saying, "I didn't want to humiliate you in front of all those people, but you gave me no choice." Or a spouse committing sexual abuse against their partner and then saying, "This wouldn't have happened if you agreed to make love more often." In each case, the malicious behavior is framed as a justified consequence, and blame is placed not on the abuser, but on others, or specifically on the victim. Number three, turning people against each other. Pharaoh punishes the people, which causes them to turn against Moses and Aaron. And so now they blame Moses and Aaron for what's happening to them. They blame Moses and Aaron for what Pharaoh is doing. This is another tactic commonly used by abusers. Imagine an employee who questions a boss's decision, and so in response, the boss forces the entire team to work late one night. The team now resents the employee who spoke up. Or imagine an abusive wife who becomes angry with her husband, so she cancels a fun activity planned with the kids. Well, now the children are upset with the father for causing the cancellation. The message is clear. If the husband challenges the wife, the children will suffer and blame him. Victims are often frustrated with the very people trying to help them because it makes the abuser abuse more. And so now the victims are the ones saying, please stop getting involved. Please stop trying to help. This was a tactic Pharaoh used, and it's still used today. Number 4, controlling the details. Notice how there are times when a plague forces Pharaoh to consider Moses' request, but rather than simply agreeing to the request, he tries controlling all the details. Pharaoh offers to let them all go sacrifice somewhere still within the land of Egypt. Later, Pharaoh says, okay, you can sacrifice outside the land of Egypt, but you can't go far. And then later he says, okay, you can go, but who do you want to take with you? Not everyone. You can't bring your children with you. And then later he says, okay, you and your children can go, but you can't take your flocks and herds with you. He's attempting to keep some amount of control by dictating the conditions. And yet his proposed compromises actually prevent Israel from really being able to accomplish the task. Imagine a husband who uses financial abuse. His wife maybe needs $1,000 to fix the car so that she can go on a trip. Well, he offers $700. Now that may seem reasonable, but that's not enough to get the car fixed. That's not enough for her to go on her trip then. And so even though it appears like a compromise, he's actually controlling the details of how much he's going to give her, and he's keeping her from going. And so he maintains that control while appearing cooperative. Number 5, lying. Breaking promises or lying does not automatically mean someone is abusive, but lying is something used by abusers. Pharaoh repeatedly agrees to let the Israelites go, only to then go back on his decision once the immediate pressure of the plague is removed. This still happens today. So, for example, a parent who threatens violence against her family, and then it comes out, it's exposed, so she agrees to go to counseling, and she agrees to have supervision when she's around her kids. But then after a while, once the pressure's off, she abandons those commitments and refuses now to keep her word on what she said she'd do. Or maybe a spouse who promises a vacation or a big purchase, but then later withdraws that promise. Not because of a genuine financial hardship, but just to control the other person emotionally by taking that away. Abusers often make promises when it benefits them, when they're desperate, when they're seeking influence, when they're pressured, but then they break those promises once the situation changes. Pharaoh does this throughout the story. Number 6, projection. Pharaoh also demonstrates projection, which is accusing others of the very behavior that you are guilty of. So in Exodus 5:9, he claims Moses and Aaron are speaking lying words. But obviously, Pharaoh is the one throughout the story who will repeatedly lie. In Exodus 10, he accuses them of having evil intentions, which is projection, because obviously Pharaoh is the one who has evil intentions throughout the story. Projection frequently occurs in abusive relationships. Examples include abusive parents who accuse their children of disrespect and dishonor, or an abusive spouse who accuses their partner of not being loving. Often someone who is committing adultery will accuse their spouse of having an affair, or an abusive boss who accuses an employee of not being a team player when it's obviously the boss that is maliciously trying to control the team, or an abusive church leader who frequently points out that other people are not acting godly and not acting righteous. Projection shifts the blame, and it's essentially a way for abusers to try to even control reality. Once again, they want to control the truth and reality. Number 7, a calloused attitude. One of the strongest indicators of Pharaoh's abuse is his callous indifference to the suffering of his people. After the Nile turns to blood, leaving Egypt without water and filling the land with the stench of dead fish everywhere, Exodus 7 says, Pharaoh turned and went into his house, and he did not take even this to heart. This indifference continues throughout the plagues. Livestock die, crops are destroyed, people are plagued with frogs, insects, boils, and hail. And yet Pharaoh remains unmoved. Emotionally, he doesn't care about what's happening to his people. Abusers often display the same lack of empathy. They remain unmoved by the damage they cause to others, whether it's destroying someone's job, destroying relationships, destroying someone's reputation, even harming someone's spiritual life. People frequently ask questions like, didn't it bother them that they ruined that person's life? Didn't he care that he was hurting the people at his own church? Or how could a mother treat her own children this way? Pharaoh's callousness is a pattern frequently seen in abusive people. Number 8, willing to destroy everything. Pharaoh demonstrates a willingness to destroy everything rather than surrender any control. In Exodus 10, Pharaoh's servants warn him. They say, "Do you not yet understand that Egypt is ruined?" And yet he still refuses to let the people go. Even after hearing that all the firstborn will die, including his own son, he refuses to relent. And when he finally does allow Israel to leave, he later changes his mind and pursues them again. Ultimately, he leads his army into the Red Sea in a final attempt to regain control, and they're all destroyed. Pharaoh is like a man or woman willing to burn down their own house with their property inside, their friends inside, their family inside, just to keep someone else from taking something inside the house. Abusers display this same mentality. They may destroy companies, churches, families, relationships, lives, if it allows them maybe to maintain control. They would rather see everything burn than relinquish power. Pharaoh provides a chilling portrait of an abuser. Though he appears larger than life, the king of the most powerful nation in the world, with plagues and huge events happening around him, his motivations and behavior are recognizable today and teach us a lot today about sin. Now, not everyone who has behaved abusively has a heart as hardened as Pharaoh's. Many people, by God's grace, truly do repent and change. Pharaoh should motivate us to pursue humility and a desire to serve others. But his story also reminds us that some people refuse to humble themselves. No matter what happens, they will not let go of the control, even if it was God himself demanding it. They would rather suffer or die than change. Recognizing the signs of such a hardened heart can help us protect others from it. Pharaoh's story is tragic, but it also highlights God's determination to rescue his people. One of the great messages of Jesus is that he saves his people from oppression. Sometimes it'll be the oppression in this life, but ultimately it will truly be from all oppression, sin, Satan, and death. God will save his people. Keep watching this channel for the next video in our series, Abusers in the Bible. Thank you for listening, and I pray that this video has helped all of us elevate our Bible study.